Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. My name is Dave Gugelli. That is Harmon Dial. Our technical producer, the man at the controls, is Grady Sass. Chairgate has a new chapter, Harmon. We forgot to switch chairs.
Yeah, I just realized.
I just realized it too. It feels weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't like it. We can't do it live on the show. That's not good. After a weekend that we went into by talking about Shohei Ohtani for the last 20 minutes of the show, we can't open this show by
I said no Ohtani talk on Monday. I made that rule.
Yeah, and then he signed with the Dodgers, so you're getting overruled. Anyways, we'll talk about Ohtani later, I'm sure. But before that, we need to talk about our friends over at 4 Winds Brewing because they are presenting this episode of Canucks Conversation. Family owned and operated in Delta, home to the 4 Winds Light Lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer, a beer for everyone, a perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Ask for 4 Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your door through the online shop at 4windsbrewing.ca. Now, if you need any help figuring out when a good time for some 4 Winds in is, obviously it's any time, but maybe a victory over the Carolina Hurricanes. Maybe if you're a Dodgers fan, Ohtani signs 10 years, $700 million.
Okay, stop.
I know. I'm reeling it in.
Walk off the set.
I'm reeling it in. Let's start with the win over the Carolina Hurricanes on Saturday night for those Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, thoroughly impressive performance. It was really, really complete. Through the first 2 periods, the Canucks allowed 4 even strength shots. Against a team like the Carolina Hurricanes that dominate puck possession, basically fire everything they can towards the net, right? They're a team that isn't necessarily chasing shot quality and lots of pretty passing plays. They're more a team that doesn't matter if they're at the point from weird angles. They're just going to pepper the net, try and create some havoc, rely on some of their bigger bodies to try and win battles. And so they're a high shot volume team, even when they struggle as they have been on this Western swing. And so for the Canucks defensively at 5-on-5 to limit them that much through the first 2 periods, of course, then pulling things out in the third as well. I was really impressed. And really the only time the Hurricanes looked really, really dangerous was when the Canucks ran into penalty trouble and put the Canes on the power play. But outside of that, it was awesome to see some fantastic individual performances. Top end of the lineup came through. The defense played better. I thought there were a lot of instances where, in terms of why the Canucks were successful and got off to a good start, a lot of little things like the defense been pinching up. Nikita Zadorov, for example, I counted at least 2 or 3 plays where he's stepping up and essentially sealing off Carolina's breakout, and that helps keep a puck in. And really, the Canucks' defensive success starts with their ability to slow the other team down when the Canucks are in the offensive zone. And I thought they executed that really well.
4-3 Canucks win. 21 saves for Thatcher Demko. I'm not going to get into the 4K chances. It was very similar, actually. I was keeping track in the press box of the high danger chances, the high danger chances. We're now calling 4K chances, I think. My complete eye test model of what a high danger chance is. It was actually very similar to what Natural Stat Trick had, so I'm not even going to read it. I had like 2 extra high danger chances on Thatcher Demko than Natural Stat Trick did. Sam Lafferty opens the scoring with his 8th goal of the season. And I was sitting next to Carol Schramm, and she pointed out to me that Sam Lafferty now has the same number of goals as Sebastian Aho on the season. So obviously Sam Lafferty finding success alongside Elias Pettersson. Let's talk about him. Let's talk about Elias Pettersson, who gets 3 points on the 4 Canucks goals. And as you'll see shortly, maybe should have gotten the 3rd assist on the 4th goal, or excuse me, the 3rd goal that the Canucks scored, which would have given him 4 points on the night. All of those goals coming at 5-on-5, and wherever we've been talking about Elias Pettersson the most, it's at 5-on-5. What did you think of his line on the night before we get into what I just kind of alluded to there?
Yeah, I mean, Pettersson was dominated. It's exactly what we wanted to see from him at even strength. The way that he was able to control the flow of play. You could also just see the difference in how commanding of a presence he had when he picked up the puck. You look at the Lafferty goal, it starts with Pettersson sort of receiving a pass close to the offensive blue line, and then sort of weaving his way through some lateral movements, creating that type of separation in high traffic areas that I think he struggled to at times over the last maybe 10 games or so. But creating that separation and then getting that chance in the high slot off. Jen Botterill, I think it was, on the Sportsnet panel, sort of also revealed that Lafferty, using his speed to sort of drive the center lane, was able to open up that high slot area for Pettersson to get that shot off, because Kane sort of had two defenders. But then you see this missile in Sam Lafferty headed straight towards the net. They have to respect that. They have to track back, and that leaves that area open for Pettersson to get that shot off, gets it low to shoot for the rebound. And then Lafferty there to deposit it. The assist he had on Mikheyev's goal too. I mean, that's an elite playmaker's assist, because that was such a tight window for Pettersson to try and nail with that pass, where you've got to be careful to make sure that the pass across isn't within the vicinity of the Carolina defender. In this case, it was a forward tracking Mikheyev. Can't be within that Carolina forward's reach to where he can knock it away, but also can't be within the goalie's reach to where he can poke check it away. So it's a really tight window to nail, and he got it exactly on Mikheyev's tape. All you had to do is have a stick on the ice. That's what elite playmakers do, is they elevate their line mates. I thought Pettersson did that. And the other element too is, for most of the season, we've seen the JT Miller line take on tough matchups, go up against the other team's best players. But on this night, it was Pettersson's line that spent nearly 7 minutes head-to-head against the Sebastian Aho line, and in that time, clearly won those matchups.
What did you think of his line mates, or what have you thought of his line mates, I should say, lately compared to a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Elias Pettersson, namely struggling so much at 5-on-5?
Yeah, I think Mikheyev's been up and down, which is to be expected given the severity of the injury he came back from. Of course, I think it was the third period of, what was the game before Minnesota? The game where also Kuzmenko got New Jersey, yeah. So Mikheyev, didn't see much time in the third period, and he's been a little bit up and down lately, which again is fine. Lafferty, he has mostly done well on Pettersson's line, but we know that he's not a real top six forward, and there have been a couple games here and there where he hasn't been at his best, even though, of course, he's also had performances like the one the other night against Carolina, where he was really effective. It's been up and down, I think, in terms of the help that Pettersson has had on his wings. And even though, yes, Mikheyev and Lafferty both scored, to me, that line's success against Carolina was an elite player dragging everybody up with him.
How much longer can it last? I think that's the question that everybody is asking. I'm not going to make you try and give an answer, because, look, we know that it's probably going to be a limited time before the shine kind of wears off. We've already seen it happen with Phil DiGiuseppe in a top six role. It's going to happen at some point. Hopefully by that point, they will have some more clarity on Andrei Kuzmenko, who I did not think played particularly well against Carolina. Couple opportunities to shoot, just looks like a guy who's gripping the stick too hard right now.
Yeah, although I will point out that at least his line didn't get caved. I mean, shots I'm looking here were 6-1 with the Kuzmenko line on the ice. So again, Carolina is a team that, even when they're not playing their best, is anytime you're sorting through any type of possession or shot metrics, they're always at the top of the NHL leaderboard. So to play a team like that, and to at least not be a liability, at least not be a problem, I mean, it's a really low bar, and it's not meant as praise, but at least if he's still working through his confidence, he's not actively hurting your team. And I mean, he was really close to scoring. It just feels like he's also snake bitten, right? I mean, there was that net front chance where I think it was late, Kuzmenko was right on the doorstep. So, he tracks that loose rebound. And then Shea just last minute is able to stick check him, and Kuzmenko doesn't quite have the power to muscle it over the goal line. I mean, those are just the little things that go against you, that it feels like Kuzmenko just needs one of those to go in for him to start regaining that that confidence.
If that play happens last year, that's a goal. Just based on the lack of puck luck he's had around the net this season. So many of those tap-in goals we saw last year, they're just dried up. They just aren't there for him. So if he keeps hanging around the net, though, they will come eventually at some point here.
Yeah, and look, I heard some people complaining that he's on the fourth line. It's like, well, how's he going to score if he's on the fourth line? That's exactly where he should be right now. You shelter him at 5-on-5. You give him that power play time. You've already spoken about it. Not going to sound like a broken record here. Look, I think what they're doing with him is fine. They need that team. They need the team to be going, and right now he's not helping them get going at 5-on-5. So he needs to get that confidence back. I think it's largely a confidence issue for him at this point in the season. How could it not be, right? So hopefully he kind of turns a corner at some point here. Okay, moving back to Elias Pettersson, who I wanted to highlight. As we said, 3 points, a goal, and 2 assists, and what should have been maybe a 4-point night if you ask Rick Tocchet and JT Miller. Rick Tocchet spoke about the JT Miller goal after the game, where he talked about how when everybody was celebrating, he went up to Elias Pettersson and said, hey, you should have gotten an assist on that goal, because Elias Pettersson had a very timely change. He kept his shift short, which, hey, that's something his line, him particularly, struggled with at times. That night he was a -3 a week or two ago. That was something that Tocchet criticized, was everybody's out there too long. Everybody's trying to make an extra move, make an extra play, and then they're too tired to back check, or they have to get off the ice. A really short shift for Elias Pettersson leads directly to JT Miller getting lost in coverage and scoring a goal. That goal where he jumped right off the bench, third goal of the game for the Canucks, jumps right off the bench, fed in the high slot by Brock Besser after some exceptional work on the forecheck by Niels Höglander, leads to JT Miller scoring. JT spoke about it post-game, and then as you'll hear in this clip we have here, I asked Elias about that post-game as well.
Honestly, it was a great change by Petey. Very selfless by him. He easily could have hung around there to see what happened on offense. And I don't blame him, but he changed, and I kind of got lost in coverage just by coming off the bench, and I didn't know if they knew I changed. That's why I yelled so loud, probably. But they did a good job of buying some time for me.
JT just called it a selfless change by you on his goal, the third goal of the game. What did you see on that play?
Yeah, I got the puck and I saw Höglander there was in, so pretty much his line was in, and also I don't know how long I was in, 30, 40 seconds. I just tried to get it deep, and it worked out great for him to pretty much just get it in, get it on his stick, and it was 3-1 for us. So, but I think everybody sees that. No, it just happened to go off a goal.
Now, we've heard before Tocchet speaking about short shifts. Something he highlighted at the practice on Sunday out at UBC was that was what he wants to see, is everybody rotating through, and the rhythm that you're starting to feel when everybody is having short shifts and everybody's fresh when they hit the ice. That's what's going to make this team successful, is kind of abiding by that and keeping to that, which I thought they did an exceptional job of on Saturday night.
Yeah, next practice they're going to work on counting how many players are in the ice so that they don't continue to take too many men penalties. I mean, it was hilarious. It's hilarious because they won. If they had lost, it would have been extremely frustrating. But yeah, you take 2 of them, and both of them involve Cole and Hughes, and I think for the week they had 3 of them.
Yeah.
So gonna have to go back to grade school and learn how to count there.
Yeah, it was funny because on Sunday, and we don't have the audio of this one, but on Sunday after the practice, Tocchet was like, yeah, I really liked our changes, except for the too many men. except for that part. But of course, keeping the shift short, it's going to be crucial for this team as we move forward. Okay, we're going to talk about Ethan Bear here, but before we do that, got to talk about Quinn Hughes, who I think had one of his worst games of the season against the Carolina Hurricanes, which was very nice to see that they still came out with a victory despite that. And hey, Quinn Hughes' worst game of the season is still the best game of the season for a lot of guys on this team, but not a great game for him against Carolina. Just 3 points in his last 6 games, which, hey, that seems like pretty harsh regression based on where he was leading the league in November.
Yeah, it happens. His ice time ended up being below 20 minutes. He wasn't out there much in the last 6 minutes, sort of defending the lead. But this is where it was, you're already seeing the dividends of the Zadorov trade. I thought quietly it was one of his better performances as a Vancouver Canuck. Earlier, I referenced the few instances where he'd stand up at the offensive or at the offensive blue line to sort of pinch and keep offensive possessions live, but also there were a few plays in the defensive zone where he'd either make a block or collect it, somehow end up with the puck in the defensive zone. And instead of panicking and immediately getting rid of the puck, icing it, or giving it back to the opposition, he'd start moving his feet, he'd skate it, or he'd make a poised decision and a subsequent pass so that the Canucks could break out with control, which helps out a ton. He was out there late, a lot defending the lead. It sort of helps to have those insurance options on a night where, yeah, it's a rare off night for Quinn. And if you don't have a guy like Zadorov and you don't have Susie, then all of a sudden your blue line and the options you have against a quality Canes team, you don't feel a lot of confidence in as a coaching staff. So now you can afford to limit Quinn's minutes a little bit. And you look at the Carolina power play goal, I think the cross ice pass, which the penalty kill has started to allow more of, that went right past Quinn. That's the type of pass that he needed to sort of take away. So I look at a sequence like that and go, yeah, it was a rare off night. And this is where you're glad that you have some depth in the bottom four. Noah Juulsen as well. I mean, he wasn't making many mistakes. He's looked more poised than he has, a lot more poised than he has when he first started suiting up for games this season. So it was great that you didn't panic all of a sudden and go, man, this blue line is screwed because Hughes isn't playing 30 minutes.
Yeah. Juulsen got some love post game from Rick Tuckett as well. And I was there and I was waiting for he's been one of our best players. He said one of our better players. I'm always listening for that now. If he says he's been one of our best players, like he said about Tyler Myers, because obviously we talked about that quite a bit. Didn't say quite that about Noah Juulsen, but he did say it.
I also wanted to bring up the PK stats.
Yeah, bring it up.
I vaguely referenced them before. I don't know if I brought up the exact numbers. So this season, Noah Juulsen has spent 26 minutes and 13 seconds on the PK. It's nearly half a game. Only 2 on the ice for 2 goals against in that time. And you look at some of the shot and expected goals against rates as well. They're by far some of the best numbers among Canucks blue liners. Obviously, he's mostly been in a second unit role. So when you're coming on in a second unit role, oftentimes it's you've just had a clear and the opposition has to get set up, as opposed to first unit. If they win the draw, they're immediately sort of set up. So that's obviously inflating some of his on ice PK metrics a little bit. But even just watching him on the PK, he's been a lot better. The way that he's sacrificing his body, paying the price, some hard clears, that effectiveness shorthanded, I'm sure, is a big reason why he's in the lineup.
And when you've got Noah Juulsen playing like this, you obviously don't need Ethan Bear. Let's dive into it.
Let's not go too far.
Our next segment is brought to you by the Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool game. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy team this year with the Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool. For those of you who dream of smoking the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes that will have you winning. But here's the big secret to lineups. It's all serendipitous, like Wendy's new limited edition chicken strips and French toast sticks. Sometimes the best teammates are the ones you least suspect. Sign up to play Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool to win weekly prizes like new chicken strips and French toast sticks from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. I had some Wendy's on the weekend. I was out. Shout out Abbotsford Nissan, my fellas out there. Hooked me up. I got a new car.
Oh, nice.
Really
that Nation Network money hits different.
I'm really stoked about it. You know all my troubles with my past car, which we're not going to delve into on the show. But yeah, shout out Abbotsford Nissan. They hooked me up. I got some Wendy's while I was out there in Abbotsford. It started snowing while I was at the dealership. And I was like, in my head, I was thinking, better buy an SUV or I'm not getting home today. So anyways, shout out the great folks over at Abbotsford Nissan. And of course, Wendy's as well.
That's when you got to negotiate for the winter tires.
That's right. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, Wendy's. Yeah, the Daily Face-Off Survivor game. I've made my pick. It's a Monday, which means I'm still in the game for now because it's the first day.
Pick?
I picked the Dallas Stars to win against the Detroit Red Wings tonight.
Okay, you hear that, guys? Bet on the Detroit Red Wings to beat the Dallas Stars.
Oh, come on. I think I'll be good today. Hopefully Wednesday, we'll chat with Frank Cervalli and see how he's doing as well. But yes, I went with the Dallas Stars to beat the Detroit Red Wings tonight. Okay, life without Ethan Bear. We need to become prepared for it, because on Saturday night, Sportsnet Elliot Friedman reported on Hockey Night in Canada that there's a bidding war going on for Ethan Bear. We've heard this from guys like Dollywall and throughout the market as well. We've been hearing this lately, that the Canucks are no longer the front runner to go get Ethan Bear, but that teams have emerged with higher bids than the Canucks. We heard the Toronto Maple Leafs potentially, but it seems like the Washington Capitals are the team that is accelerating to the front of the pack when it comes to the Ethan Bear sweepstakes, if you want to call it that. The Canucks clearly aren't interested in getting into a bidding war for, a bottom 4 defenseman. So they are not going to be getting in on Ethan Bear. Rick Dollywall reporting today that the Canucks are out on the Ethan Bear sweepstakes.
Yeah, I mean, this would have, of course, felt like a much bigger blow if the Canucks hadn't pulled off that trade for Nikita Zadorov. So 2 things here. One, how much we discuss life without Ethan Bear and whether it matters or not is going to, in my opinion, come down to when Soucy returns and you have 4 lefties. Can one of the lefties successfully play the right side? And you have options in terms of defensemen that have played the right side before: Ian Cole, Soucy a little bit, Zadorov. But it's an open sort of question as to, can you successfully make that transition mid-season? Is the coaching staff comfortable with it? How does that affect the D pairs? Because if, let's say, Ian Cole can shift over to the right side and he looks the exact same as he does right now, then it's not going to feel as big of a blow, because once Soucy's back, you have a blue line that you're not desperately needing an Ethan Bear like presence. I mean, you would have 6 defensemen that could conceivably be in the lineup ahead of him if you want to include Tyler Myers, which some people may want to, some people may not want to. And the other thing, this is the big wild card with Bear, is how much does the severity of his injury that he's recovering from and missing such a significant chunk of games, the effect that has on your conditioning, impact what he actually is as a player? Because yes, we know Bear's a net positive. He's probably a true talent 3rd pair defenseman who can elevate up the lineup in a supporting role if need be. But that's when he's healthy. That's when he's playing his best. What does he look like when he's initially returning, right? And that's where nobody really knows the answer to that until he actually suits up for NHL games.
So the idea that the Canucks pick Nikita Zadorov over Ethan Bear, are you comfortable with that statement? And do you support the Canucks' decision to do that if that's how you feel?
Well, what ultimately just comes down to what style of defenseman do you prefer more, right? Because they're pretty different players. Bear doesn't have much size. You worry a little bit about his down low defensive play, breaking up the cycle. Can he do that? Can he be responsible defending the front of his net? Whereas Zadorov, he's big, he's mean, he can break up those plays in front of the net. He's got such a long reach. He adds physicality. But the asset that Bear has, in addition to being a right shot, which makes it a better fit from that sense, is that he can move the puck really well. Zadorov has shades of that when he's moving his feet well, when he is making poised decisions like he did against Carolina, but that's not always his game on a night in, night out basis. He can be a little bit more erratic with that. So from that sense, you also have to sort of weigh that, okay, Zadorov cost you a 3rd and 5th round pick, which is a fair price to pay, but Bear probably wouldn't have cost you anything. Zadorov, on the other hand, is probably at this point the safer bet in terms of who's going to provide more value for you down the stretch once you consider Bear's injury situation and a more of a playoff style defenseman, considering the Canucks are going to make the postseason, assuming nothing goes dramatically off the rails here. So I honestly don't have a problem really with them sort of ending up with Zadorov instead of Bear.
Okay, Dollywall reported a few things this morning when he spoke about it, and one of the things he said was that the Canucks were close to a 3-year deal with Ethan Bear before he went unqualified, or they didn't give him a qualifying offer, I should say, this past offseason. Now it looks like on a 1-year, Bear's expected to get $1.5 million on a prorated 2-year deal. On a 2-year deal, he's expected to get over $2 million a year. Canucks probably shouldn't match that offer if that's what it sounds like he's getting from Washington, correct?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that report about if it's a 2-year deal, it's probably going to be in that $2 million range. It's a lot to pay for a player that, again, has that uncertainty around what's he going to look once he comes back. And ultimately, again, even when he's at his best, Bear on a good team is a third pair defenseman. Again, he can maybe play up the lineup to be with Quinn Hughes just if you want to balance your D pairs a little bit. But I'm usually not of the mindset that you want to overpay for players towards the bottom end of your roster, especially when you're already paying somebody like a Carson Soucy, who's a number 5 defenseman, 3.25 beyond the season, as a player who maybe might be a second pair defenseman, but has really, in terms of what he's proven himself to be at this point, really closer to being a dominant third pair defenseman. You're already investing a lot in that sort of bottom 4 type of defenseman. So yeah, considering that potential price, it's understandable to be out on Bear.
Okay, chat is blowing up, telling us we have some Andrei Kuzmenko news to get to. Don't know if you want to call it news, but we will get to it because Grady's been on top of it, and he's going to chime in during our Anyone Else segment, which starts right now. It's time for Anyone Else, presented by DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat, and it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more. That's right. For a limited time, our listeners get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's all capital letters, NATION, and the numbers 25. Ordering is easy. Just open the DoorDash app, choose what you want from where you want, and your items will be left safely outside your door with our default contactless delivery setting. Go check out DoorDash. Use code NATION25 for 25% off your first order. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. Get your Anyone Else's in, folks. Grady, Harmon, and I have been on air. We haven't read this story from our pal Ian McIntyre over at Sportsnet. Spoke with Jim Rutherford about Andrei Kuzmenko. What do you got for us? Well, what does IMAC have for us that you're relaying to us?
Yeah, so he just had kind of a discussion with Rutherford on where Kuzmenko is currently at, and he was asked by Ian that the Canucks, well, he said to Ian that the Canucks still believe in Kuzmenko, but they will, quote, keep an open mind to kind of just the dynamic with him and Rick. And then he went on to say, I'm concerned only to the point that now he's feeling the pressure. And when you start to feel the pressure, you start pushing, squeezing the stick harder and passing when you should be shooting, and vice versa. You get a little bit concerned. He says he believes in the staff we have and that they will continue to work with him. He's a good player. He's a capable player. Is he a guy that's going to score 40 goals again? Maybe not, but certainly the way he plays, you should be able to project him for at 25. So, kind of the things that we've talked about, like sophomore slump. I personally think like all the trade talk and kind of the rumors around that right now is a bit getting ahead of ourselves. But I do understand, like, teams are out there. They saw what he did last year. They're going to at least make the call, and the Canucks should be doing their due diligence, at least listening to offers when we all know that they need to upgrade their decor. So I'm not sure what his value would be right now. It's certainly much lower than what they could have hypothetically got it, before the deadline last season. But I think it's going to be real interesting to monitor this situation going forward here with Tocchet and kind of how he works and where he fits in with the team.
Love it, Grady. Thank you. On Saturday, another thing Friedman reported was that teams are calling the Canucks and asking about Andrei Kuzmenko and his situation. As Grady pointed out there, probably not going to get a ton for him if you trade him, so let's not get too ahead of ourselves in the trade discussion. And that quote from the president sure seems like the Canucks aren't in any sort of rush to get rid of this player.
And why would you be? I can understand that. Okay, if you have with certainty determined that he's just not going to be a fit long-term with Rick Tocchet, which we don't know if that's actually happened or not, then okay, you're in a position where you're sort of looking at offers. But even if you want to shop him, even if you have determined that Kuzmenko is not a fit with us, this is the absolute low point of his value. This is the absolute low point of his season, where he's been in the coach's doghouse. He's playing the fourth line. He's not producing. And yet there is also an element of luck there, where after shooting, 27% last season, of course we expected some regression. I think it's probably gone too far in terms of, the other side of the coin, where again, the example, the type of scoring chance that he had against the Canes, just some of those that would normally go in that aren't right now, or shots that he's generating from the inner slot that he would typically bury that he's not. Kuzmenko just profiles to me as the type of player that once one or two go in, that he can be the type of player that can rattle off a lot of points in a small stretch, and then all of a sudden the narrative around around sort of not necessarily his long-term fit with the Canucks, but at least what he is right now for you is a lot better if you're an outside team, because right now you're looking at it and you're going, it's on the fourth line. What's really keeping him in the lineup is that he can play first unit power play. It's not, he's not getting many minutes. He's not really producing. From an outsider's perspective, it may not be that appealing, but if he goes on a run where he's scoring a lot of points again, and let's say he earns his way back in the top six, then all of a sudden the Canucks would be in a position where they're actually they're not dealing from as
they got a stronger hand.
Exactly.
Daniel Brody, please stick with him for a bit. You can't just ship a player out in every slump. Antagonist agreeing, saying Kuzi will bounce back. Here's a good one from Karan, which kind of leads me into my anyone else, but I'll ask you first. When Suter comes back, who is the healthy scratch? I would say Nils Aman, probably. He's staying with the big club. Like, Nils Aman's not going back down this season, but yeah, I would probably think it would be Nils Aman, maybe Phil Di-Giuseppe, one of those two guys, probably. Maybe Kuzmenko. I would say not Kuzmenko.
Yeah, I want to see him.
That's not how you get his confidence back at this point.
The other thing is, when players are struggling, they want an opportunity to work their way out of the slump.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Especially when a guy has scored 39 goals last season. He's not going to be that player, I don't think, ever again moving forward in terms of being a close to 40 goal scorer, but he can be a top six player in the NHL. He deserves, I think, an opportunity, so long as his defensive play isn't horrific, to work his way out of the slump. So I agree with you, either Oman or Di-Giuseppe.
Okay. The reason that I said Suter reminded me of what I wanted to say for anyone else is that I'm going to hint at what we're going to talk about a lot tomorrow, and that is Rick Tocchet using rest as a weapon for his team. We didn't really talk about this during the week last week, but the Canucks had a scheduled practice on Wednesday, which would have been the morning after their loss to the New Jersey Devils by a final score of 6-5. Rick Tocchet canceled that practice, gave the team a day off. They came back on Thursday, shut out the Minnesota Wild. Post-game, Tocchet spoke about how that was a gut feeling for him and how he thought he was making the right call by giving the team the day off and canceling practice. And he said, thank God I made the right call, because that obviously was the right call to give them the rest rather than go back to practice and work on the X and O's, even though they didn't have the best game against the Devils. So I found that interesting. What I found even more interesting was the fact that after the Saturday night game, they had an optional practice out at UBC, which, okay, that's somewhat normal. It gives P.S. Suter, which is the reason I thought of Suter, a chance to practice, get back on the ice, because he's a guy who needs 3 to 4 more practices before he's able to really get back into the lineup. He needs that practice time. He could really use it. So Suter got that practice time, which I thought was great. It was an optional. Today was a scheduled practice. Today, Monday, December 11th, was a scheduled practice for those Vancouver Canucks. That was canceled as well by Rick Tocchet. We don't have quotes from it, obviously, because it was supposed to practice and they had a day off, so nobody's talked to Rick Tocchet yet. But the reason we'll talk about it tomorrow is because I'm sure he's going to expand on it more. But the Canucks have had 3 practices since the start of the month. And look, we know they had the grueling month of November. I really like what Tocchet's doing, where he's kind of walking that line of, okay, when do I pull back? When do I push? And knowing when to do what. And I think him canceling practice today kind of goes further to that idea of, okay, my players don't need to work on X's and O's right now. They need to get rest. Quinn Hughes, who we just said had a bad game on Saturday night, Quinn Hughes needs to sit on his couch and relax, do some stretching, do whatever he wants. Quinn Hughes needs to rest. Quinn Hughes does not need to hop on the ice for a practice. I'm sure he didn't need it on Sunday, didn't need it today either. He needs to be fresh for Tuesday's game. That's what Quinn Hughes needs. And again, that's just one guy, but Elias Pettersson as well, who have speculated is going through something. He needs some time. Give these guys some time to rest. I think Rick Tocchet has done an exceptional job of managing his players in that regard.
Yeah, and you're about to go on a road trip soon, right before the holidays. Plus, I think Tocchet has a really good sense of, first of all, he has a great relationship with the players, and I know that he is constantly looking for their input. It's a two-way street in terms of the relationship he has with them, but also he's the type of coach that oftentimes many of the decisions he makes are through the lens of what would I have felt and experienced as a player, just because he had such a lengthy and successful career as a player. So I'm sure that he's putting himself in the player's shoes and thinking, what would I sort of think about an extra practice here versus a day off? And I'm sure he's been, sending a text to somebody in the leadership group to get their thoughts and input on it as well. And especially, again, after the type of performance that they had against the Canes, where their even strength game was exactly the type of bounce back that you wanted to see after a long stretch of 500 hockey, they've also just straight up earned a little bit of rest here.
Tampa Bay in town tomorrow night, the Florida Panthers on Thursday. And then after that, like you mentioned, the Canucks will head to Minnesota for a game against the Wild. And then Sunday, another game against Chicago Blackhawks. And that one, those games, we'll talk about it later in the week, I'm sure. But also worth noting that for our local time, it's an 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. start back-to-back days. So that's going to be tough to manage if you're the Canucks. And I think Rick Tocchet, with the context of those games this upcoming weekend, I know we're talking about this on Monday, but in the context of that, I think it's an even better move. Jeff Patterson wrote about this for us at Canucks Army. You can go read that right now. Jeff Patterson will be on the show tomorrow, and we will certainly be asking him about that. But let's get to some listener thoughts here in our Anyone Else segment. This one from Antagonist. Thoughts on Dhaliwal saying the Canucks are still interested in Chris Tanev. Yeah, of course they're interested. Price has to come down somewhat significantly from what we would expect the Flames are looking for. But hey, we said the same thing about Nikita Zadorov was, well, the Canucks aren't going to want to pay that price. A third and a fifth round pick. The Canucks were okay paying that price. Don't know if they need to go get Chris Tanev at this point, but what are your thoughts on that from Dhaliwal?
Well, to me, if you're making that move, you need to be confident that you can keep him on a reasonable extension beyond the season. Because that, to me, would be a spot where, okay, now you can justify giving up assets when you've already given up some for blue line help. So that's my thought process there.
Fair enough. Andrew Christensen asked, what was the biggest problem with my old car? A lot. The biggest one being it couldn't go up hills confidently. So that was the tough one, was when you accelerated it. Just, anyways, long story. It's been a long, arduous process with that vehicle, and I'm happy that is over. Shout out once again to my friends over at Abbotsford Nissan for saving the day there. Okay, got another one here. This one from Karan. This was in the context of his first question about P.S. Suter coming back. He said, why not scratch Phil DiGiuseppe so then you have two centers on the fourth line, more penalty kill options? I think that might be the biggest argument against Phil DiGiuseppe when the coaching staff looks at who needs to come out of the lineup once P.S. Suter gets healthy. I also think Nils Aman's played pretty well since he's been up with the big club. So, yeah, I agree with you, Karan. I think it probably will be Phil DiGiuseppe at this juncture.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't watched. I mean, Aman looked great when he initially got called up. I would be curious to sort of really dive into, which I haven't done to this point, the tape into Oman's sort of PK play and some of his even strength shifts more recently, because they played well against Carolina. I think there were a couple of games in the sort of week before where that line had been caved a little bit. But yeah, I mean, you bring up a fair point.
Okay. We've got so many in here. Daniel Brody pointing out that we didn't even mention that it was Luongo's Ring of Honor night on Thursday when the Panthers visit. That'll be a good one. That'll be a really good one to go
Save
see.
those midweek
I got
debate.
some hot takes on Luongo. But man, just as a side on the topic of this, the Canucks social channels have been posting a bunch of Luongo highlights, his pads through the years, great content from the Canucks social team. And you almost forgot how dominant Luongo was. Like, especially with that glove hand, how good his glove hand was. And you go back and look at scouting reports of when he was drafted, and there were scouts saying that's the best glove hand I've ever seen. Quite possibly, he's retired, he's in the Hall of Fame now. Quite possibly, may still be true today that that's the best glove hand we've ever seen in the NHL from a goaltender.
The great save Luongo call by Jim Houston is like will forever be burned into my memory.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay. Looks like that's it for anyone else's. So I am going to close it out with some Shohei Ohtani stuff. Close out anyone else with some Shohei Ohtani stuff. Because if you go back and listen to Friday's episode, there was a lot of talk about Shohei Ohtani coming to the Blue Jays. There's a lot of talk of what that would mean for hockey coverage over at Sportsnet, what it would mean for us as baseball fans in Canada, and how huge it would have been. Didn't happen. Shohei Ohtani signs with the LA Dodgers. To announce it, Shohei Googled LA Dodgers logo, took a screenshot, and then posted it on his Instagram because that was the most dull free agency announcement possible for the greatest player of all time to make. No video, no hype, nothing. Just, hey fans, sorry I took so long. I've picked the Dodgers. All the love to Shohei, but he did not sign with the Toronto Blue Jays, which I talked a lot about on Friday. So that did not happen.
Blue Jays and Canucks fans in the same boat. Canucks missing out on Ethan Bear. The Blue Jays on Shohei Ohtani. It's the same thing.
I want to put this into context for Canucks fans because what happened that day was John Morosi, who is MLB Network's reporter, reported that Shohei was on a plane to Toronto. He reported that. Like, that was the MLB Network reporter. This is like if the Canucks and the, Toronto Maple Leafs, I think I've already thrown this example out, but I'm going to further it, were the front runners for Connor McDavid.
Connor Bedard. Bedard's coming home.
Bedard. Yeah, Bedard. Great. That's even better because people want Bedard here. Bedard. We'll go with Bedard. Okay. Vancouver and Toronto are after Connor Bedard, and Elliot Friedman tweets out that, yep, Connor Bedard is on his way to Vancouver. And they're the finalists and the decision's probably coming today, all this sort of stuff. You hear all this. And then the NHL account reposts it because the MLB account reposted that report and they were like, here's the latest on Shohei Ohtani. The official MLB Instagram account was putting that John Morosi report out there.
And they kept it up for hours, like into the next day too.
Yes.
And then you have Shai Davidi and Ben Nicholson-Smith and like all these, MLB reporters saying, folks, don't listen to the internet rumors out there. Like, we're the big J journalists here. Like, you should be listening to our type of coverage. Well, Shai, Sportsnet retweeted the John Morosi post. The MLB made a graphic, just like you said, Quads, the MLB Network. So the league's official broadcaster partner. And then Shai comes out and in his article and starts to take jabs at the fans. Dude, ask your own social media team at Sportsnet. Why are they amplifying this guy? Why is the MLB the one making all these graphics, leaving it up?
Yeah.
Like, it's not on the fans here. We're reacting with, and I'll include myself because I shared that Dodgers Nation guy's post. And I said, wait until you have legit MLB insiders confirming this.
And then you got one.
John Morosi, exactly, who Sportsnet, he's on the Fan 590. Like, he does hits with all these Blue Jays guys. Like, give your head a shake here, man.
That's not some random guy is the point here. And that's why everybody bought into it so hard.
And now it's snowballed into, Toronto, like, it's good for the game that he's in LA. Toronto's like a smaller market team when in fact it's not, because it has the entire country. We can get into the whole Canada's team narrative another day, but regardless, there's a lot of fans coast to coast that support this team. So you just see the arrogance of these American media guys now, like saying,
Anyways,
oh, it's good for the game. It's a bunch of BS. I'm sorry.
Anyways, you're absolutely right, but $700 million over 10 years for
It's
Shohei
more than
Ohtani.
the Arizona Coyotes franchise value.
Makes him the highest paid athlete. And look, over the next 10 years, he's going to get $700 million. Over the last 10 years, the Oakland A's have spent $680 million on roster building as a whole. Like the Oakland A's roster for the past 10 years has cost them $680 million to operate. The Dodgers are giving one guy $700 million over the next 10 years. Okay. We're not going to, someone's saying, Harm, why aren't you smiling in the chat?
Why isn't he chiming
Talking about baseball. That's why Harmon's not chiming in. But I've got something for Harmon to chime in on. I'm completely
silent
setting him
protest
up
until the MLB
baseball
talk is
ends.
done.
Yeah, we're done talking Shohei. I'm sure I'll bring it up at another time at some point, but we're done with that today. I just want to point it out that it was crazy that it was an actual reporter reporting that Shohei's on a plane, because it's not even like someone told me they're in negotiations and the talks fell through. No, someone told me he's on a plane. Okay, well, he's either on the plane or he's not on the plane, and he wasn't on the plane. It was Robert from Shark Tank, the one that everybody was tracking. Robert comes out and he's like, yeah, who is Shohei? It's not me.
If I was a billionaire in the SoCal area, I would have 100% booked a flight to Toronto just to get everybody in the internet riled up.
And I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories here, but apparently the Dodgers...
That's kind of what the theories are out there, because that guy, Robert, is repped by CAA, who's Ohtani's agent. And the original tweet about the flight was sent from an account that hadn't tweeted in 10 years. And the last tweet was about like sports law or something. So, all the people online were just going crazy with it. But, I think one thing we can kind of, confirm, Quads, is that the Jays were just used almost as leverage at this point to kind of drive the price up. Now there's reports that they were willing to go, almost as high, if not to the same amount. I just don't see it. $700 million for Rogers that they just spent, $250-300 million into their new renovations. We would have, and you were doing the math on Friday, we would all had to go over our data every month and pay those extra $10-20 just to be able to afford that. But at the same time, let's be honest here, he was probably never coming here to begin with. And in the end, Soto goes to the Yankees, Shohei goes to the Dodgers. And that's just the way baseball works, is that the rich teams just open up the paychecks. And that's why we have the kind of no cap, but kind of the, payroll system that exists in that league. Yeah.
Okay. No more baseball talk. Let's get to Betway. I'll get into the conspiracy theories another day. Not today, though. Let's get to Betway, Grady. This is our Betway bet of the day, brought to you, of course, by our friends over at Betway. And what is it, Harmon?
More baseball.
The Philadelphia Phillies, baby, to win the 2024 World Series at plus 1,100 odds. A $10 bet returns you $120 over at Betway. You must be 19 plus to play. If you play, please play responsibly. Harmon, I set you up here because you had some fun with our old producer, Aaron Bordado, and I, when we were rooting on the Braves and saying, the Braves are going to get it done. And of course, they ended up losing in the NLCS to the Philadelphia Phillies.
So I was going to give you the silent treatment. I honestly was not going to say a word, and you were going to give it off to me, and you would have literally heard nothing but static. But then, okay, fair enough. You picked the Phillies, and I like Philadelphia as a city. So much fun. And the making fun of Aaron for you guys being so pumped up about the Braves. Now I can't even, when you talk MLB, I'm just like, I don't even know how much I can trust you.
Fair enough. Daniel Brody in the chat said, boo baseball, cricket is better. Aussie here, never watched baseball. You played cricket and you were pretty damn good at it. And then we took you to a batting cage and we just saw this cricket swing coming out through the batting cage. You're making good contact on the baseball. It's crazy how transferable it was for you, that just coming in right in, you were just sending it right back out. It was pretty crazy to watch. How long have you played cricket for?
Well, I stopped like 3-4 years ago.
Damn.
I don't know. I played a lot as a kid. I mean, my main sport was soccer, and then number 2 was cricket. And I mean, I played a lot of sports though. I mean, I played basketball. I basically played everything.
Yeah,
except volleyball. I hated volleyball.
I was average at every sport. Well, below average at every sport, I should say, and then slightly above average at baseball. That's how my athletic profile worked out.
Gee, I would have never guessed.
All right. Let's close it out there. I think we've got everything. Oh, I had a prospect report. Okay, I had a prospect report, but I already did 4 Wins as our presenting sponsor. This prospect report is also brought to you by 4 Wins. Go check out the 4 Wins light logger. Real quick, I'll have more on Wednesday about different prospects. Well, one thing I just wanted to bring up is that Ty Young seems to have lost the starting job in Prince George, which is not what we expected. He has lost it to, he's now 17 years old, but I gotta find his name here. He's the kid from North Van. Yeah, Joshua Ravensbergen. He was the kid. Remember this? The North Van ski lift save. Do you remember this? The kids pulled out. They like thought really fast and they pulled out like a tarp or like one of those fence things, and they caught someone that was dangling from a ski lift. Do you remember this?
I think I remember the news.
He was the guy behind this. He was the kid. I think he was like 13 or 14 at the time because it was a few years ago. Local kid from North Van. Now with Prince George, he is playing unreal. He's got 11-2-0 record, 6 shutouts, and a 1.69 goals against average. Young will get his starts, but because of that, the rookie is forcing himself into the Prince George goal crease. So something to keep an eye on. Ty Young seems to have lost his crease for now, and for good reason. Like this Ravensbergen kid to keep an eye on. For sure. And not just because he had the wherewithal to save that person with the tarp. That's an incredible video, by the way. That is unbelievable. But also now it's just crazy how comes full circle. The guy's playing with Prince George and he's just doing awesome. He turned 17 in November. So just something to keep an eye on. Super quick prospect report there. But now we will close it out. For my co-host, Harmon Dial, and our technical producer, Grady Sass, my name is Dave Quadrelli. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.